Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that might not be the most glamorous part of homeownership.
But it is essential, you're right.
Absolutely, we're talking about waterproofing, specifically in the bathroom. We've got this awesome step-by-step guide. You sent this over, right?
Yeah, it's a great resource. It covers pretty much everything you need to know.
And it seems super relevant, right? I mean, who hasn't dealt with a leaky faucet or a bit of mold in the bathroom at some point?
It's definitely a common issue.
Hmm.
And it can lead to some pretty serious problems if you don't catch it early. Things like water damage, mold growth, even structural issues in extreme cases.
Exactly. And this guide's mission seems to be helping us avoid all that, right? Like it's all about preventing those headaches before they even start.
That's the idea, yeah.
So let's jump in. The guide starts off, kind of predictably, with prep work.
Right, preparation is key. It's like the foundation for everything else.
But it's more than just like wiping down the surfaces,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you do want a clean slate, of course.
Yeah.
Remove any dust, debris, anything that could mess with the adhesion of the waterproofing materials.
Makes sense.
But the guide also stresses the importance of filling any cracks. And this is actually really important for you because even tiny cracks can let water seep in and cause a lot of damage over time.
I never would have thought of that. So, like, even those hairline cracks.
Especially those. They might seem insignificant, but they can be a real problem.
So what's the best way to tackle those? Just some basic sealant.
That can work for small cracks, but for anything bigger or in really wet areas like your shower, the guide suggests considering cement board.
Instead of drywall.
Exactly. Cement board's just much more resistant to moisture. It's a tougher material, so it'll hold up better in those high moisture areas.
So it's like an extra layer of protection, basically.
Exactly. Think of it as like the first line of defense against those pesky leaks.
Love it. Okay, so we've got our surfaces prepped, cracks filled. What's next?
Well, then the guide dives into the world of primers.
Waterproofing primer, right.
Yep, exactly. And this step is all about creating a good surface for the actual waterproofing membrane to stick to.
So it's kind of like when you're painting, right? You got to use a primer first.
Exactly. It's the same concept. The primer helps to seal the surface, makes it less porous, so the waterproofing membrane can really bond effectively.
And of course, the guide stresses, let that primer dry completely.
Oh, yeah. Following the manufacturer's instructions is crucial here.
Mm.
I mean, you don't want to rush the process and then have it all backfire on you.
Patience is key.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got a prepped surface. Our primer's dried. Now it's time for the real deal, right? Sealing everything up tight.
You got it. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of waterproofing.
So the guide talks about silicone sealant for gaps and waterproof tape for corners and stuff.
Right, think of it like this. The silicone sealant's like your flexible filler. You use it in those tricky spots where different surfaces meet. Like where your floor and wall come together or around those pipes.
It's going to be flexible, right? Because those areas can move a little bit.
Exactly. You need something that can move with the structure and maintain that seal.
And then the waterproof tape, that's more for reinforcement, right?
Exactly. It's often used with a reinforcing fabric, kind of like a mesh, and it adds strength to those joints and corners.
I guess those are areas that are probably more prone to, like, shifting and stuff.
Exactly. And that can compromise your waterproofing if you're not careful.
So the tape helps to hold it all together.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got all the cracks and gaps sealed up. Now we move on to the main event, the actual waterproofing membrane, right?
Right. And here you have two main options, liquid or sheet membranes.
What are the pros and cons of each?
Well, both options create a waterproof barrier, but they're applied in different ways. Liquid membranes, think of it like a thick paint. You apply it in multiple layers, letting each layer dry completely before applying the next. The guide recommends applying the layers in perpendicular directions.
Perpendicular. So like one coat up and down, then the next coat side to side.
Exactly. It helps to create a more solid barrier.
Smart.
And you really want to pay attention to those corners, around fixtures, any tricky spots.
Make sure it gets everywhere.
Exactly. And don't rush the drying time.
The guide mentioned something like 24 hours between coats.
Right. At least 24 hours between coats, and then another 24 to 48 hours before you can start tiling.
So patience is definitely a virtue when it comes to waterproofing.
Absolutely. It's all about creating that impenetrable armor against water. No shortcuts.
Got it. So that's liquid membranes. What about sheet membranes? How do those work?
Sheet membranes are more like, well, sheets of material. You cut them to fit your space and then adhere them using a special adhesive or a thin-set mortar.
Thin-set mortar, that's like what, a kind of cement?
Yeah, it's a type of cement-based adhesive that's specifically designed for tiling. It's super sticky and creates a really strong bond.
Gotcha.
And when you're laying down the sheets, you want to overlap the edges by at least 2 inches.
To make sure there are no gaps, right?
Exactly. That overlap creates a continuous seal, and you use a roller to press the sheets down and get rid of any air bubbles.
So which type of membrane is better, liquid or sheet?
It really depends on your specific bathroom and your personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Sheet membranes might be faster for large, flat areas.
Yeah, okay.
But liquid membranes can be more adaptable for those tricky shapes and corners.
Right, makes sense.
So it's really up to you to decide which one's the best fit for your project.
The guide then zeroes in on the shower.
Ah, yes, the shower. This is where things get really serious.
You know, I was thinking that, like, the shower is probably the most important area to get right.
Absolutely. It gets hit with the most direct and frequent water exposure, so it needs extra attention.
So what does the guide recommend for the shower specifically?
It says to extend the waterproofing up the walls to at least 6 feet.
Wow, 6 feet. That's pretty high.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're covering all the areas that could potentially get splashed.
Makes sense.
And then you meticulously seal the shower tray. Again, tape and silicone come into play here. You basically want to create a watertight enclosure within the shower area.
Okay, so we've got the walls and the shower tray all sealed up. What's next?
More waiting. You got to let that waterproofing cure completely.
I guess that's kind of like with the primer, right? Patience is key.
Exactly. This curing time allows the waterproofing materials to fully set and reach their maximum strength. You want to make sure it's completely waterproof before you move on.
So how long do we have to wait?
The guide recommends at least 24 to 48 hours.
All right, well, good things come to those who wait, right?
Exactly.
So once everything's cured, what happens next?
Oh, when comes the exciting part. The water test.
Sounds a bit nerve-wracking.
It can be, but it's a crucial step to make sure everything is properly sealed before you move on to tiling.
So you basically fill the shower area with water and check for leaks.
Exactly. You temporarily block the drain and fill the shower pan with a few inches of water, and then you just wait and watch.
Looking for any signs of drips or leaks.
Exactly. If you spot any leaks, you know you need to go back and fix them before you move on. It's better to catch them now than after you've already tiled everything.
Definitely. So assuming the water test goes smoothly, no leaks, then we can finally start tiling.
You got it. But even the tile installation has to support the waterproofing. You want to use a waterproof tile adhesive.
Okay.
And the grout between the tiles, another potential weak spot.
Right, water could seep through there too.
Exactly. That's why the guide recommends using epoxy grout or a specifically waterproof grout.
And then sealing that grout as well.
Absolutely. It adds that extra layer of protection.
It seems like every little detail matters when it comes to waterproofing.
It really does. It's all about creating a multi-layered defense against water intrusion.
So anything else we need to know about the tiling process?
Just make sure your shower floor has the proper slope for drainage.
Right, so the water flows towards the drain.
Exactly. You don't want any water pooling on the floor.
And then what about maintenance? Anything we need to do to keep that waterproofing in tip-top shape?
The guide recommends checking the sealant regularly, around the tub, shower, sink, and reapplying it if necessary.
Good to know. Well, this has been super informative. I feel like I've learned a ton about waterproofing.
Glad to hear it. It's definitely a topic worth knowing about, especially if you're a homeowner.
So the main takeaway here is that waterproofing is not just one thing, it's a whole process, right?
Absolutely. It starts with prep work, then the primer, then sealing all the cracks and gaps, then the waterproofing membrane itself, and then making sure your tile installation supports the waterproofing.
Wow, it's like a multi-layered defense system.
Exactly. And each step is crucial for preventing water damage.
It really makes you think, if water can do so much damage in a bathroom, what about other areas in your home that might be vulnerable?
Oh, that's a great point.
Like what about under sinks, around windows, basements?
Yeah, those are all areas that can be susceptible to water damage if you're not careful.
So maybe it's worth taking a look around your home, identifying those potential problem areas, and thinking about what preventative measures you could take.
Absolutely. It's always better to be proactive than reactive when it comes to water damage.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.